The campaign, A Home for Every Woman Survivor, was inspired by the women that we support. Contento has been running for the past 4 years, opened its first doors in 2020 at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. And as we all know, during the pandemic, there was a high number of domestic violence cases, and we responded to that need, and we opened up our first doors of refuge spaces here in Birmingham. Since 2020, we've had some women that came in 2020, and they've been in refuge since that time. 4 years confined to one room in a refuge, hindered from progressing, hindered from having stability, hindered from making a home of their own. So the inspiration of the campaign is to ensure that every woman has to have a house that they call their own home in going forward. The vision and the mission of the campaign, the vision, as you can probably see from our banner, is that we ensure that every woman has a home of their own, that they move out of refuge, that they transition into their independent homes, that they transition later maybe in life, in the future, into owning their own homes. The mission is to transition our women from victims to survivors, to move into dispersed accommodation, into independent accommodation, and into home ownership. It is important to provide houses or homes to survivors of domestic abuse because it gives them stability. It gives them a sense of belonging. It restores their confidence. It shows them that they have overcome whatever obstacle was holding them back, that they are able to live independently on their own. In our mission and in our vision is that we move women that are victims of domestic violence from the community, from their perpetrators, put them in a safe space where they are able to recoup, find their confidence, find who they are, find their own identity. They are equipped, they're allowed to have some financial independence and financial stability. They are assisted to look for jobs, look for training if they don't have any skills training. We counsel them, we provide them with counseling services, we provide them with legal advocacy while they're in refuge. This is to give them the skills and the confidence and the tools for them to be able to live independently. Once they are at that stage when they are feeling that they are able to, we want to be able to transition them into accommodation, which is dispersed accommodation that will still be managed by us. They still receive our support because remember, this is probably somebody who's probably never managed a tenancy on their own, who's never managed to pay bills, who's never managed to pay rent and budget and on all those things. So we don't want them to put them into community and set them up to fail. So we want to be able to put them into a step down from a refuge. So it's some part of the community, but they're still part of our organization, right? So we still continue to support them, and that is what we call dispersed accommodation. Once we are confident, and once they are confident that they are able to live on their own, then we begin to withdraw our support slowly by slowly until they are fully independent and until they are able to manage their own tenancy on their own, until they are able to budget, until they're able to find their jobs and find education and find everything that can equip them to live independently. So we withdraw our support slowly but surely until it's got to be a mutual understanding and mutual agreement between us and them to say, I think I'm okay now. So we then let go, but we still stay close, we still stay in contact, we still tell them that our support is within reach as soon as they need it. This is to avoid them having to fall back to their perpetrators, because in some circumstances and some situations, some women have fled, they've gone into accommodations and they have not received the right support. And because they've never been able to live on their own, they feel as if the world is crashing on them, and they end up going back to the perpetrators, and the perpetrators take advantage of them. They actually now are even more abusive, because they say, you tried to run away, now you cannot live without me. So they now increase the level of abuse that they do. So what we want to try to do is to avoid them having to go back if they don't want to. If the perpetrators changed and they're convinced, that's fine. We're not here to stop them from going back if they feel that is the right thing for them. But we don't want them to go back out of desperation. We want them to go back if that is what they think is good for them. But we want them to empower them, and we want them to get to a position where they can even say to the next person that they meet, I live here, this is my home. If I'm having a relationship with you, either we live here or I live with you, or whatever they agree, but at least let them have the confidence to be able to stand on their own and defend their own will and their own rights with confidence, knowing that they're not going to be thrown onto the streets, they're not going to be homeless, they're not going to be left destitute. We still are there to support them. Whenever they get to a point where they're struggling, we still give them some support. Our long-term vision is that these women have access to affordable houses, right? We all know that the home ownership ladder is a very complex thing at the present moment. So what we want to do is to be able to help these women. Once they have transitioned into independent accommodation, we begin to work with them, work on their credit scores, work on their savings, work on them being able to eventually say, we are able to buy this property out of your hands, and we either hand it over to them. The good thing is that once we have sold the property to them, or we've handed the property over to them, it gives us the finances to go and get another one, and then move another woman out of refuge again, and free up refuge space for someone who's in crisis, for someone who's needing the intensive support. So the cycle is that we don't have a blockage. The cycle continues to move. So we create space in refuge, move the one that is ready to move out into dispersed, they move them into independent accommodation, and then that is creating that space in refuge again. So someone who's calling from home, someone who's calling from the community, who's fleeing from domestic, still has got a place. And this one is also transitioning. They're not having a roadblock. They're not having a stoppage. They're not having something blocking their development and their independence. We look forward to women that will be stable. Like I said, I think the key word is stability. Because when they're in refuge, this is temporary accommodation. Anytime they can be moved around. If you imagine a woman with a child who is in school, one day she's registering this child in this school. The next thing, the perpetrator probably knows the address, or there's something that has happened in that refuge, and they now have to move on. That means that child has to move schools again. But once they have a home of their own, they've got stability. They can register their children in schools, and they know that they will not be moved. And even if the perpetrator did find out the address, there is what is called sheltered accommodation. They can get protection from the police. They can have restrictive orders that restrict that person from coming within the radius of that home. So that is stability. This is why I'm saying the key word is stability for us. Like I said, I think a lot of the work that we do is either outreach, which is supporting people while they're still in their homes. The next stage is refuge. Refuge is temporary accommodation. Like I said, the challenges of temporary accommodation is that people can move and sometimes are made to move from one to the other. So this campaign is aiming to a long-lasting solution, solution to the women, in that they now have a home of their own. Finances is number one. Accessing landlords that are willing to take people that are on benefits is the second one. References is another one. So a lot of us, when we're either looking to rent from private landlords, so they are looking for references. They've been in Refuge for a very long time. They've not shown the ability to be able to pay their own rent and look after their own tenancies. So landlords are not confident. They are not at ease to give out this accommodation to them. The main one really is the local authorities. So the local authorities are currently overwhelmed by the number of people that are homeless, that are looking for accommodation. As we all know, recently the cost of living has risen very, very, very high. So now these women that are in Refuge are competing with people that are being made redundant, that they suddenly lost their jobs, that are struggling to keep up with their homes, and they're declaring themselves homeless. So we've heard in the past that for every one house that becomes available from the local authority, there's about 1,000 of them that are bidding. And as you heard probably from the women that have shared, or you saw some of the testimonials, they will tell you that they have to wake up at midnight when the houses are released on a Wednesday, and they have to put in their bid, and they will see that yes, you've put in your bid, but you're 962 person that is waiting for this particular house. So this is the reason why we've had women that have stayed in Refuge for the past 4 years, because they cannot move on. They cannot access housing from the local authority, they cannot access houses from the housing association, and they cannot access private rented accommodation because landlords are not willing to take them on. So because these are women that we've already been supporting, we are not going to be asking for them for a reference if we are able to secure these homes. So we will move them on. Number two is that because they are going into a step down from Refuge into dispersed accommodation, where we are going to be training them on how to keep a tenancy. So that is our reassurance that we are still supporting them. They are still in our services. They are still are being paid for by the local authorities to live in our homes, but we are able to work with them until they are able to transition to independence. So that is why our campaign is more of a solution and an answer, because it's now resolving, number one, the housing situation with the local authorities. Number two, the reluctance from private landlords to give them accommodation. So if we secure accommodation on our own, then we can then let this accommodation to these women. Well, we are looking forward to collaborating with a lot of partners, local authorities. We're looking forward to, hopefully, when we raise enough awareness, we can push for policy change. We can push for advocacy for these women to be prioritized for housing. We are looking to work with people that want to work with us to, in terms of construction companies giving discounted houses to these women. Corporate organization giving back to the community their corporate responsibility, working with us to ensure that we're able to realize this vision. We cannot do it on our own. We need everybody. We need to work with everybody. We need to work with the communities. We need to work with everybody that is involved, that can contribute. People that want to donate to our cause, that is most welcome. People that want to help us raise the awareness as well in the community as well. We are also looking forward to those kind of collaborations so that we can help solve this housing crisis that we are facing. So what we've done, because we've realized that a lot of the initiatives that we've tried to do to resolve this issue, to try and get funding, to try and get to move on these ladies, have not paid any dividends. So what we've done, we've developed a concept which we are pushing out and we are driving out. As Contento, as a refuge, we are also a housing provider. We have worked with a few care providers, care support providers, including one of our own Queensway Homes, whose profits also, or proceeds, are also plowed into this vision. So we've trialed out and we've realized that we are able to become a housing provider for a lot of these other companies that are housing people that are needing support with learning disabilities, mental health, physical disabilities. A lot of these other organizations, especially the upcoming organizations which are providing supported living, they are struggling to find a housing provider. So what we're doing, as what we've launched as our campaign, is that work with us. If you work with us and we become your housing provider, then whatever we make out of our collaboration or our working together is plowed into our vision and our mission and our campaign to secure housing for every woman. So that is the business side of things. We are trying to expand and trying to think outside the box and trying to find ways of raising more finances so that we can secure houses for these ladies. So it's one and the same thing. All our efforts are trying to accomplish the mission. So all our efforts are being channeled towards the mission. So whatever we're doing outside, what our core purpose is for in terms of providing refuge spaces, whenever we are creating other streams of income, they're all being channeled towards the mission. Like they say, Rome was never built in a day. So it's small steps that we're taking to make that big change. And as we reach out and as we talk to more people, as we work with more organizations, as more organizations spread our word and they become our clients or our collaborative partners, I believe that we can achieve our mission and our goal faster. I'll start with probably my personal background. One of the reasons why we've set up Contento, obviously my personal background is that I grew up in a home where there was a lot of domestic violence. And I remember as a young girl thinking that when I grow up, I want to make a difference. I heard about the Geneva Convention where women were going to talk about their rights, and I remember as a young girl thinking, I want to be part of that Geneva Convention. I want to be part of the women that make a difference and make sure that no woman needs to live in an abusive home. No child has to be brought up in an abusive home. So that is my personal drive of why I do what I do. But over the years, as I've been working with the ladies have become my inspiration. I have personally supported women when they came through our doors the very first time. I've seen them when they come in dazed and they don't even know their name. They've lost all hope. Some of them were coming to us as a last resort just before the last step that they could have taken of taking their own lives. And then seeing them and seeing their journey as we have been supporting them, that has become my fuel every day. Every time that we support these women, every time that they share their story, every time that we see a success story, every time that we see a transformation in any one of these ladies, that becomes my drive. That is what makes me to work even harder and harder and harder and say, if only we could eradicate this pandemic, this horrible thing of domestic abuse. We can't stop it from happening, but at least we can do something to those that have suffered from it. I always talk about a particular lady that was brought to us by the police. The police called us. Sometime it was during the day. The lady had presented herself to the police station, I think about 10 in the morning. She had to lie as she left her home to say that I've got a doctor's appointment. She walked to the doctor without any bag, without any phone, without absolutely anything. Walked herself to the police station and handed herself over to the police. Fortunately, during that week, we'd also done our campaign and let the police know that this is the service that we do. And so the police were prompt to ring us and say, do you have any space? And fortunately, we did. So the police said, okay, we'll bring this lady over to you. Obviously, they had to go through taking statements and everything, and it took a long time for them to finish that. They finally dropped that lady. I think it was way after our knocking off time. I think it was about 6 in the evening. This woman was as white as snow in her face, with absolutely nothing else except the clothes that she was wearing. Didn't have a toothbrush, didn't have a towel to shower, didn't have absolutely nothing. The first thing that I did, the police dropped her with me directly, was to take her to a local Asda and pick up a night dress for her, a toothpaste for her, a towel for her, toiletries for her, absolutely everything from scratch. Fast forward, this woman stayed in our refuge. She now has got a job. She has now moved on into her own home. She is now a confident, lovely, beautiful woman. I could never had imagined or visualized that beautiful face, makeup, all lovely and beautiful on that day when I first saw her. When I first saw her, I could have not made a difference between her and, I'm not sorry to say, of course, because she was really wide, drained. And you could see that this person, she was really on the verge of giving up. But to see that journey, it has been amazing. It's been inspirational. It's been a fuel to my journey. It's a memory that is stuck up with my mind, and it will always be for a very long time. Very, very big vision. If they say if it doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. So yes, sometimes I look at it and I'm thinking, there's a bold statements that we're making here. Home ownership for women, that's very bold. I nearly say to my marketing team, let's take out that, because I think that's too bold. But like I said, if it doesn't scare you, if it's not big enough. But in terms of balancing and in terms of managing, I think for any successful business, you need a good and a strong team. And I'm really grateful and glad to say that I have a very good team, and I believe that we are able to take it on. We've taken on bigger things before, and this, much as it is a challenge, I think we can do it. I want to challenge every business, every policy maker, every decision maker to make solving the housing crisis for domestic abuse survivors a priority. I want to challenge them to make it their corporate responsibility if it's a business. I want to challenge the policymakers to make sure that the policies that are set out are for women that are surviving domestic violence. When it comes to housing, I want to challenge the policymakers to make sure that there is a set number, or there is a way of prioritizing these women. Because I always say, imagine some of these women, they would have been married and they would have been living in large and beautiful houses. They would have been living in a beautiful home, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom. But when they come into a refuge, they're now confined to one room. That's a big transition in life. That alone can kill someone's confidence. That alone can kill someone's hope. So, but if we are able to support them, rebuild them, give them skills, and then transition them to move on into their own homes, make it their own home, I think that can rebuild them. That can make them become women of notable character in the society. The women that we support are amazing women, very skilled. Some of them are bakers, some of them are chefs, some of them makeup artists, some of them business women. But they are confined because they cannot move forward. They cannot begin to work while they're still in refuge, because obviously that affects how much is paid for their rent. So that stops their progress. That stops them from achieving their goals. So I want to challenge every business, every policymaker, local authorities. Let's look into this and let's make this a priority. Okay, so first of all, we want as many people to help us raise this awareness, to talk about this campaign. So if you receive the news, I want you to be able to spread to your colleagues at work, to your family, to your friends. Talk about it. If in homes, if you're selling your home, think about it before you sell it to the highest bidder. Think about, can you offer it at a discounted rate to an organization like us that can then pass it on to a woman when they're ready to buy that house? To the people at large, your donations are most welcome. But most importantly, let's talk about this. Let's make this a priority. Let's make this an agenda for every meeting. Let's make this an agenda for every gathering. Let's talk about this, because we need to eradicate domestic violence. We need to make sure that we enable these women to thrive and to become successful and to be who they are meant to be. I see this growing exponentially. I see thousands of women getting their own homes, owning their own homes. I see women that are able to have a home and then have a life a life that can spring from their own home, because they are stable, because they are confident, because they are all okay. So I see this spreading even to other organizations as well. We are happy to work collaboratively with any other organization that wants to share in this vision as well. I want to say to the women out there, your courage, your strength is our drive. And I want to say that you are not alone. We are fighting for you. We are fighting in your corner. We are making sure that this is noised everywhere. We are making sure that people know that there is a crisis. We've dealt with the pandemic. It was publicized all over the news. But this is another crisis that needs the same magnitude of publicity and spread, and the news spread around. So we are here for you. We hear you. We understand your plight, and we are here to support you all the way to the end.